Welcome to StaarCast, a show about tarot, divination, and all things mystical. StaarCast is a celebration of StaarCon, the Southeastern Tarot Artist and Readers Conference. I'm Amy Mauser, and here's your host, Christiana Gaudet.
Welcome to another episode of StaarCast. StaarCon is getting closer and closer. StaarCon will be January 21st through 23rd, 2022, live in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, and online on Excel Events. Tickets are available now. And we have so many great presenters at StaarCon. And with me today is my guest, Fred West. How are you, Fred?
Hey, how you doing, Christiana? I'm really excited to be here. Looking forward to getting to see people in person and hear everyone and participation. And I get so jazzed about this stuff. So I'm really looking forward to getting to Florida, getting things going. It's kind of taking center stage away from the holiday season.
We are better than Christmas. Yeah.
We're better than Christmas. Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at StaarCon and virtually connecting with everyone. I enjoyed the process last year. I really liked how diverse the speaker list was last year. There were a lot of people who I had never heard of, and I really enjoyed a lot of the presentations. And so I look forward to getting to physically meet some of those people and seeing what the courses look like for 2022. So yeah.
We have an even broader, taller, fatter, wider selection.
Good.
This
Yay.
time around. Some really interesting classes. Frank Wiatkowski doing tarot and the Beatles.
Yeah.
For example. I mean, just
awesome.
like it really, I mean, not that was just one on my mind, like, wow, where else are you going to find that? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very, like I said, very diverse group. And I love how we had people from other areas of the world participating last year. The lady from Peru was fantastic.
Yes, she will be with us in person.
Awesome. And
yes.
I really enjoyed that perspective. I like hearing, I mean, here, and I've been doing tarot since the 80s, let's just say that.
Yeah, same.
and I get so into tarot, but from the American perspective. And so I'm always interested to hear the international perspective on what we do here in this country, and what we kind of take for granted. I want to hear the diversity and see where it's being used in other places. So I'm always excited. And that's one of my favorite things about going to conferences is that we get to talk about the thing that we love, the thing we geek out about, tarot and divination, being a modern day oracle. We get to hear that, but from other perspectives. And it's how do they do it? Not so much what it is they're doing. Yes, we get a little of that, but I like to hear the other parts of the tarot and divination world of like, what are they doing here? What are they doing there? And, I dig on that. I think that's cool.
Wow. Thank you for that perspective. And we certainly are an international conference. We do have Maria Luisa Salazar, who you mentioned. She will be with us in person. We have Marion Kirk from Scotland. She, I think, is still hoping to get in person, but may not. We also have Bigot Windmill in, I think she's in Germany. So we do have people from a lot of places. And yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but that is an important thing to remember, is that what we do really is global.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, and what we do is important for society. We are modern day oracles. We are in ancient Greece, you would go to Delphi to get to meet with the oracle. And that was a big thing. That was like Christmas, Thanksgiving, your birthday all rolled into one thing if you got to go to see the oracle. And it was like a family feast day, and coming to see us, we don't get those honorifics, but we still provide that service to individuals, but to the communities in which we live in. That we provide this way to connect to the divine that gives us a message, gives us something to work with when we take that message home and work with it, kind of thing. I keep thinking of Thalassa from the Bay Area Tarot Symposium. She has this great thing of like, we are the whales cruising through the collective subconscious, and we come to the surface and we spray all of our wisdom and knowledge all over, and then we dive back down into the collective subconscious, kind of thing.
Oh man, I'm going to use that on the days like when I take a couple of hours off. That's where I now am. I'm diving into the collective subconscious and cannot be disturbed. There we are.
Exactly. And the first time she said that, I think I laughed out loud. But her message around what it means to be a modern day oracle really resonates with me. Again, I've been doing this for a long time. And while it's not my main job, I mean, I have a muggle job, but my magical job, this stuff is far more interesting, important. I always enjoy doing it. There are days when I know I have a lot of readings and like before I start, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I want to do this. But by the end of the day, you can't shut me up because I'm so energized and enthused. It's literally like being a rock star, kind of thing. It's that feedback that I love getting. And that's why I'm like really excited to get up in front and teach a class full of people something, because I'm like, I don't know what 100% is going to look like, but I know that we're all going to enjoy the time we get to spend together. I'm a big proponent in when one person teaches, two people learn. Right. And so in my workshop, I don't want it to be one way. I want it to be two ways. I want everyone that comes to my workshop to feel free that they can say, hey, I look at it this way, or I don't agree with you, but and I want to use it this way or that way. And I'm excited for that. I don't know where it's going to go. Hopefully it doesn't get too carried away.
Should I be worried?
No, I don't think you should. And I'm kind of glad I'm kind of one of the last speakers of the day. So I don't have to worry about like, oh, somebody's got to get into this room after me to have another workshop. I'm kind of at the end of the day. And if we run long, we run long, kind of thing.
And when I scheduled you toward the end of the day, it was because you're a West Coast guy. And I thought, we've got the time change.
Yeah.
If I put you early in the day, that's going to be in your body clock, like really unfairly early.
Yeah.
So I tried to put, even though you're with us on our clock, I tried to put West Coast people toward the end of the day for that reason. But I'm glad that serves you. No problem.
Yeah.
So what is the title of your presentation?
So my title is, it's about reconnecting it's about diving deeper into the concepts of birth pairs. Right now, I'm struggling to get what the actual title of my workshop was. I forget what I gave you as the title for my workshop, but it came out of, I've also been studying astrology, and what I find interesting in astrology is the smaller asteroids and planets, the ones that people kind of discount, but they have a larger impact. An example of this is, people look at Venus as the planet of love, and that's a planet of what, in my humble opinion, as a newly minted astrology student, Venus is what you're attracted to, not necessarily what you love. And so what I always look at is, I always look at the asteroid Juno, because Juno is Saturn's wife. It's kind of the Hera role. Juno and Hera were the same goddess. Mm-hmm. And she never left Zeus or Saturn. Even though he was philandering all over the place, she was his partner. And so when I want to see how somebody's going to do in a relationship, if I'm looking at a chart, I want to see where Juno is, because that tells me in the course of the relationship, this is how you're going to work through the difficulties, right? So it's the smaller aspects, not the bigger aspects. And so when I had to come up with a workshop concept, I was like, how do I apply this concept into something tarot related? And then I have always loved the concept of tarot birth pairs. But we always tend to focus on our majors. Which is kind of where a lot of the material lies. It's directed at the majors. I happen to be a Tower Chariot person.
Are you? Okay, so I'm Strength Star.
Yeah. John he's my disco ball. He is a sun wheel magician.
Ooh.
My husband. And I call him my disco ball because, he has a lot of energy and lots of ideas come and go. But we focus on what our majors are, and we forget that when the concept of tarot birth pairs was kind of created, it wasn't just your majors, but you got minor cards that went with your birth pairs. And how do we embody, how do those minor cards play against what our birth pair is? And we don't, it's one of these concepts of we forget that they're there. And I have to say that one of the people that created this concept, Angeles Arian, she's been haunting me for many years because I never got a chance to meet her when she was alive. But her name over the last 5 years keeps popping up in front of me. And I'm like, I didn't even know who she was. I didn't know that, she was one of the people that taught Mary Greer and James Wanless. Mm-hmm. She was very influential. And sadly, I never got to meet her. And when you go back to like the Tarot Handbook, there's a whole chapter on birth pairs there, but she doesn't call them birth pairs. She calls them constellations. You get a constellation.
Ooh.
So again, astrology to tarot, it's like stars, constellations, birth pair, it's there, but we don't always capitalize on that, right, kind of thing. And so I want to dive deeper into what do the minors represent in your tarot birth pair.
Wow, we are going to have so much fun with that. That is so right up my alley. I mean, I'm so excited about every class we're offering at StaarCon. Yeah. But I have to tell you on a very personal level, that is exactly the kind of stuff that really grabs me. And I started tarot in the 80s as well. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. I only took one formal tarot class back then at my local New Age shop.
Right.
And the teacher gave us like an old-fashioned photocopied page from an Angeles Arian book, mm-hmm. which now I think about and I'm like, oh, you don't do that. But, back then, these
that's
things.
What you did.
That's what you did. Yes, that's what you did. And so her name was with me from the very beginning, along with Eden Gray. Of course, my first book was an Eden Gray book.
My first book was an Eden Gray. My first independent tarot book was an Eden Gray book. The one that came, the one that did not come with the deck, the one that I purchased was an old Bantam Eden Gray kind of book, kind of thing. I think it was called The Complete Tarot.
Was it the black one or the blue?
Yeah, no, it was the black one.
The black one. Me too.
Kind of thing. And I used, for many years, I used a lot of her keywords. And then somebody pointed out that her keywords were good, but they were all kind of negative. Like they weren't really positive. And I'm like going, again, here we have a tarot luminary that like nobody was able to interview and record for posterity who she was, what her life was like, because that all plays into who we are as tarot readers, is how we, what's going in our lives goes into, to a certain degree, how we read and, what we're producing moving forward. And like, nobody was able to interview Eden Gray to like record who she was and how she got into tarot and what her philosophies around tarot and divination were. And I'm like, I think that's really important stuff, kind of thing. The people that produced the Morgan Greer, those two gentlemen passed away. And it's like, why did you make those choices? Why did you choose to put the people up front in the card, versus what other, and we'll never know those answers, sadly.
And that's such an important point, because at StaarCon, one of our primary missions is the honoring of our card artists and designers. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of card artists and designers on site. We'll mm-hmm. have Lisa Hunt, Ciro Marchetti, all kinds of designers, Gita Rash, all sorts of people.
Yes.
Jamie Sawyer.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to ask them that very question. What's going on in this picture? That question that we cannot ask of those who are no longer with us.
Exactly. And I think that's really important. It's one of the things, Robin Wood, I love her deck. But then she independently published a book that really goes into depth of like, why is that belt blue? Why is that dress red? Why is this going on? Why is that? And having an artist do that really helps you bond even better with the deck. I mean, there are many decks that we're like, okay, this is great. And the little white book that comes with them says, oh, this card means this. And it somewhat describes the picture, but it doesn't tell us why did the artist make those choices.
And that bugs me. Yes. I want to know.
I want to know. I mean, sometimes like I'll look at a card and go, I know what the card means and I will talk about the card, but I look at it and I go, but why did the artist make this change versus that change? And that is, if I understood that, I might be able to bond with the image better, if that makes sense.
Now, that brings me to another thing we're doing at StaarCon. That Friday night, as part of our opening ceremony, you and I have the great privilege, along with Jenna Matlin, of sitting on a panel facilitated by Nancy Hendrickson about how the different card images of different decks mm-hmm. influence our interpretation.
Yeah.
I am very much looking forward to this.
It should be very fun. Again, Nancy is a dear friend of mine. We often have coffee in the mornings, and her and I have been studying tarot most of our lives, and we get into some deep conversations around tarot and imagery. So, and the thing is she's going to be the ringmaster of that circus, and I'm going to let her. I have no idea where she's going to lead that conversation. And I said to her, I said, you can't let me keep talking. You have to shut me down. Because what will tend to happen is even though I'm an introvert, when I'm up in front of people, I tend to be an extrovert. And like, if there's long silences, I feel like I have to keep talking. And so I will, and I don't have any issue with that. And I'm like, Nancy, you have to shut me down if I keep talking. So for those of you that are attending live, if I run on, please hold up your hand and say, Fred, please stop.
So let me ask you, what is your current and a couple of questions just about your practice.
Yeah.
Current favorite workhorse deck?
My current workhorse deck, and I have tried to change it, but it just keeps being used, is the This Might Hurt Tarot by Isabella Rotman.
What's a very modern choice?
I really, honestly, I love that deck. It's a joy to read. It's very easy. I love how it is very inclusive, let me just say. The knights are mainly all women on motorcycles, which I love. The Two of Cups is two men. There is all ethnicities represented in the deck. And it has this modern art style that I just find very easy to read. For me personally, like I can throw those cards out and be like, oh, okay, here's what it is. Usually when I'm reading for clients, I put a selection of decks out and allow them to choose.
Do you? What might be in that selection?
So for a while, I had the Muka Tarot out there. The Robin Wood is usually out there. And then I like to put in a more challenging deck like the Margaret Peterson deck.
What an interesting deck is that?
And I don't know. So I bought the Margaret Peterson deck based on a recommendation from Avalon Cameron. And I got the deck and I really, really loved it. But I felt that the borders on the cards were restricting the artwork pretty much. And so it was the very first time I ever did this, I swear to God, but I actually cut all the borders off that card.
You did it. You trimmed your deck.
I trimmed my deck. It was the first deck that really was like, please get rid of these pale gray borders on this deck. And so I trimmed it. And the minute I trimmed it, I had to round the corners and, clean it up a little bit. But wow, that deck is so much more powerful without its borders on it.
Really?
The imagery, I kept the words at the bottom because the imagery is so abstract, you kind of needed to know some reference point. So I kept the text at the bottom of the card, but all around it is all trimmed. And the artwork really just flows out of those cards so much better. And I really like it. Although some days a lot of people don't choose it as clients because it is so abstract. And a client's idea of tarot is they have this idea of what they expect a tarot reading to be. And that's why I put out something easier for them to digest, kind of thing, like a Rider-Waite or even a Robin Wood. But the ones that go for the challenge, I mean, some days I'm like, oh, what is that card? And if it's a Margaret Peterson, I may have to pick up the card and actually touch the artwork to just kind of go, okay, yeah, this is the Seven of Pentacles. Okay, this is the farmer making his choices. It's like, oh, okay. But I love that aspect of it. I have been doing tarot so long that sometimes I can do a reading without ever looking at the cards. You just tell me, you say, it's this image. And I'm like, yeah, my brain clicks back into that going, oh yeah, there's that image. Let's talk about the card. And a lot of times in my practice, I'm talking about what the card is, but I'm also keeping in mind what the narrative thread is that the cards are producing.
So, okay, let me ask you there. Are we talking the narrative thread that the cards are producing in this reading, or are we talking about your knowledge of how this card is depicted in 5 or 6 other decks that you have in your head?
I might start from the second place of knowing what the image looks like in 5 or 6 other places, but I never want to lose what the narrative thread is in this particular reading.
Right.
Because that's the message that's important to the client.
Right.
Okay. And I never try to assume what the whole message is, because I am just the voice of the universe. I am there to say this image over 5 or 6 images is supposed to represent this, and the narrative thread, here's how it weaves in. But at the end of the day, whoever is my client, their understanding and how they're applying what they're hearing me say is entirely personal, and I don't make any preconceptions about what that is.
You bring up a very interesting point, because we're interpreting the cards and what we get from the cards, but the client is interpreting, like the word oracle. You've used the word oracle.
Mm-hmm.
And the word oracle is so interesting because it means like a bunch of different things. It
Mm-hmm.
is the tool.
Mm-hmm.
It is the person who gives the message. It's
Mm-hmm.
the place where the message is given, and it is the message itself.
Yeah.
All of those are oracles, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there is that piece of interpretation that's up to the client.
Yes.
And that's such an interesting thing. And thank you for bringing that up, because I've never really let that sit. And I mean, I've been a full-time professional reader now for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And I've never really let that sit, other than when the client comes back and says, well, in the reading, when you said do this, this, and this, and I'm like, I said what now?
Yeah. and that's where that's coming from. I mean, when I put my cards away at the end of the day, I have no idea what I told anybody.
Right.
And so somebody will come back and say, oh my God, that was so life-changing. And I'm like, really? Okay, if you say so. But that was how they perceived it. And so when I'm teaching new Tarot students, I say the biggest hurdle you will ever overcome is letting go of the process, of getting beyond the is what I'm saying correct and right? Because it doesn't matter whether you're correct or right, because the reading is not for you. It is for the other person. That's why I tend to struggle for reading for myself, because I can't speak it and hear it at the same time.
I really encourage my students to read for themselves. I think it's a really important process.
Yeah.
And with that problem, I will often encourage them to set it up like you're reading for another person, record it or write it out, and then go back and experience it as a reading.
Yeah. I always encourage people to record sessions with me. I know not everyone does. I used to give people paper and pen to record it, because it's something very ephemeral. And if they don't record it, how do they come back and listen to it? And Dan Pelletier, in his audiobook that he did about the process, he says, their recording of it is really important, because it's how they will remember the process.
Right. Yeah, I'm big with recordings. I always, back in the day, I would give everyone a cassette tape. Then it was a CD. I'm holding up a CD. I've got CDs with my face upon them. Yeah. But now you also have a choice of a digital download. And it's a huge thing.
It's a huge thing. And everyone that I encourage to do it, usually I would be one-on-one with somebody, and I'd say, here, let me show you how to use your phone to record the session. And then I would say, I want you to listen to this 3 to 5 days from now. Because in the moment, you get one interpretation, but later you get a second, and sometimes a third or fourth interpretation that I wasn't aware of. You weren't consciously aware of it at the time, but with a little small amount of distance, it has a deeper ramification.
Sure.
If that makes sense. And so I that's why I always encourage people to record a session. If you're going in to get a reading, it doesn't hurt to say, hey, do you mind if I record this? And hopefully your person you're getting the reading from says, please, by all means.
And, I have to say, I'm suspicious of those who don't. Not every reader wants to do the technology piece of providing the recording themselves.
Yep.
But a reader who does not allow recording, in my mind, that's a red flag.
Should be.
Yeah.
Should be. What are you hiding?
Right. Right. What do you not want to be responsible for?
I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm a client it's my reading. It's for me. The message is for me. It is mine. I paid you for it.
Right. You've paid for this here.
You are, as a reader, I am the voice of the universe. I am the way that the universal message gets translated to you. And so it's like, please record, knock yourself
Absolutely.
out.
So what was your first deck?
So now you're asking my secret origin story.
I am.
So Tarot came to me in a very, very funny way. I have 3 older brothers, and the brother closest to me in age, I'm the baby of the family. So my closest brother, Sean, was very into astrology, loved it. And so unfortunately, he was like one of the worst, not worst clients, but he was like, whatever was written in the local paper astrological section was written in stone for him.
Oh no. You're right. Worst client. Yes.
Worst client ever, right? And so one year for Christmas, and I was still in high school, my mother bought Sean a Christmas present, which was an old copy of I want to say it's the Swiss 11J.
The
kit.
IAJ. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in my family, Christmas gifts, each of us had a section around the tree where all our gifts were piled.
Oh, that's fun. Okay.
And this particular gift fell out of Sean's pile and into my pile, and we didn't realize it until days later. So the tarot deck was for Sean, but it wound up in my pile. And I don't share very well. So my way to keep that gift away from Sean was I would put it in my book bag and take it to high school with me.
Oh my gosh.
And I would sit in study hall and give readings to everyone at the table around me. And I was like, I was immediately fascinated. I'd sit there with the book and say, okay, this card in this position, I think it's trying to say this. And I was doing Celtic Cross at the time, the standard, what you did in the early 80s tarot kit, kind of thing. And I was fascinated by the concept. I was like, this is cool. I tend to like knowing more about other people than I'm willing to reveal about myself. And people will reveal unbelievable stuff in a tarot reading. And so I did this through high school. And then when I went to college, I quickly learned that I could have a fun evening if I went to a bar and just started doing readings at a bar. Yeah. And then, as a newbie reader, I don't want to charge people. And people are like, oh, we really want to give you some money. I'm like, buy me a drink.
Buy me a drink, right.
Kind of thing. But it was a great lesson. It was a great way to learn to read. And again, when I went to college, I didn't have the book anymore. And that's when I got the Eden Gray, and I made a cheat sheet out of it. And that would sit on my lap, and I'd be like, oh, okay, and did that for a while. And honestly, I kept the Eden Gray cheat sheet and would add notes to it. So it was all scribbled and coffee stained and whatnot after many years. And it was a crutch. And the only way I got over that crutch is somebody they asked to see my keyword cheat sheet. And then while they had it in their hands, they asked for a reading, and they would not give me my cheat sheet back.
That's so great. So is there any Eden Gray keywords that really stick in your head now as funny or never heard that before, or yes, very formative? Go ahead, share.
I want to say it's the 7 of Cups, and it just said castles in the air.
Yeah.
Without any connotation to what castles in the air meant. Or the 9 of Cups was the wish card without any connotation of what she meant by that. And that was the only keyword, was 9 of Cups was the wish card. Okay, so yeah, it was kind of a struggle, and it took somebody else to point out that these keywords are not very inspirational, or they don't lift things up in the way that I think is important in a tarot reading.
One of my favorites that has really formed my understanding of a particular card, the card being the High Priestess, is Eden Gray referring to the High Priestess reversed as a woman of low virtue.
Wow.
Right? But that opens up so much in terms of understanding the High Priestess upright as sort of this perfection of womanhood and our idealized version of womanhood. And sort of, where does that fit when we talk about societal misogyny? And, there's so much packed into that card. And it will show up in readings in very beautiful and very terrible ways based on how a person deals with women.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. And this is a good thing. It's very different than how I see the High Priestess.
Right.
Because to me, the High Priestess is the club bouncer at Studio 54.
Oh my gosh. Like, okay.
If you're respectful and you show up in the right way, in you go. If she doesn't like you, you're at the back of the line. And if she really doesn't like you, come back next week and try again.
Okay, fair. No, I'm good with you. Fair. That makes sense.
Kind of thing. And I love hearing everyone's different interpretations of things. Honestly, you having said that, I'm going to think on that for a little while, and that's going to change my perspective of the High Priestess. And this is where, going back to what I said at the beginning, is the importance of a tarot conference is getting to meet people and talk about this stuff and share this wisdom that is not coming and getting a bunch of tarot readings, but it's we as professionals sharing our interpretations of things, is so important. Nancy blew my mind the other night in one of her Instagram lives about a card that I've always struggled with. And it goes back to Eden Gray. Her keywords were nostalgia. That was the key word.
6 of Cups.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm like, but if I'm giving a reading and I flip that card over and it just talks about nostalgia, it's like, how does that move a client forward? Because we're now all of a sudden, no matter what the narrative was, we're being thrown into the past.
Oh, can I speak to that for a minute? Yes. Okay. So, couple things. Number one, if it's a situation of and why are we doing this? Why are we still in this relationship? Why are we still at this job? Oh, because it's been for a long time. We're honoring the history. It may not serve us anymore, but we're still honoring that history. So that's one. Or this sense of familiarity. Why do you date that same kind of guy over and over and over again? Oh, your father was like that. So, and then those are some dysfunctional things that show up there. There are also very functional things that show up. Yeah. The underpinnings of family tradition, what we do at the holidays every year, that kind of thing, which, could be much more positive. But, and especially when it shows up with the Wheel of Fortune, because the Wheel of Fortune, is those cycles. Right. So, and anyway, if you wonder what happens at a tarot conference, what will happen at StaarCon, you're going to go to a lot of great classes. You're going to meet a lot of great people. You're going to have an opportunity to shop for some great stuff. But maybe most importantly, whether online or in person, you're going to have the opportunity to have these conversations with people from all over the world. Fred West, I want to thank you so much, first of all, for agreeing to come to StaarCon and teach an amazing class. I cannot wait. And thank you for being my guest here on StaarCast.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you in person again and seeing all the lovely people that show up. And I am so looking forward to, those conversations that happen during workshops and in the evening in the lounge when we get to sit and just play.
Absolutely. And if someone wants to reach out to you for a reading, how can they get in touch with you?
So I do have a website, but I'm not actually doing readings at the moment. My website is fpwconsulting.com. I keep trying to get my services up there for readings, but my muggle job is keeping me so well occupied that I just don't have the bandwidth to handle doing readings at the moment. But I will.
But you
I
will?
honestly will. I will eventually, probably in the new year, get services up there so people can purchase a reading. I will do a nice recording and send them the recording. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so being able to study with you at StaarCon then is a rare and wonderful treat.
It is a rare and wonderful treat.
That is fabulous. Well, we will see you in January. And friends, tickets are available right now. StaarCon.com. That's StaarCon. Ticket prices range from $50 to $425. Surely there is a ticket there for you. You can join us in person in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, or online on Accelerants. Either way, it will be rich, immersive, robust, and a heck of a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us for StaarCast. For more information about our annual conference, visit us online at StaarCon.com. That's StaarCon.com. We are looking forward to seeing you in January.